I was actually just talking to a friend of mine, Jennifer, I just got off a message chat with Jennifer, and she's someone that I've known for many, many years. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman, a fantastic friend, and she's now in Florida. She's doing wonderful. She's in real estate. Anybody looking for real estate help in Florida, definitely talk to Jennifer. I'm going to put her information here. And it's Friday, so it's the end of the week, and I wanted to have a moment to just thank you, to say thank you, because this journey that I'm on right now, making videos, talking to you guys, and trying to really, my whole mission is to share love, to give you some insight, anything that I've learned throughout the ages and throughout the years of my working in entertainment, in music, management, and marketing and PR and all the other things. So, I figured if any of my experiences can help you, then I've done something good for myself, and it makes me feel good in return. I've also had a lot of funny experiences throughout my life, a lot of different kinds of experiences. One by one, slowly I'll keep sharing these stories with everyone if you're interested. But the reason why I actually I'm talking now, I remember being on social media for years and people saying, we're curious about what your voice sounds like because we've never heard you speak before. We've never heard your voice before. And I always smile to myself because actually what's really funny is many, many years ago, a passion of mine has always been, obviously it still is, to have an opportunity to talk to people. And for those people who've known me for years, they know that I used to always talk about one day having my own talk program, having my own talk show. Why? It was never ever about the fame or popularity. It was always about the fact that I love talking to people. The fact that I love meeting people, the fact that I love introducing people to each other and coming up with new ideas and coming up with new contacts for people, new business ideas or connections, anything that I can do that involved talking and connecting with people, especially if it also involved cultural conversations. I was born in Iran, raised in New York. Now I'm living in Istanbul. So I've traveled a lot throughout my life. So basically anything that would talk about people, their backgrounds, their cultures, anything that would bring people together in a matter of cultural conversations was just something that I loved. Years ago, I went back to Iran. I made a documentary on the youth culture of Iran called Nobody's Enemy. I'm thinking about maybe releasing that. It's very old now, but I'm thinking about maybe putting that out on YouTube. It's kind of old, so I don't know if it's relevant that much anymore. But it does have some interesting things in there because, for a lot of the Yas fans, it was actually the first time that I met Yas was through the documentary that I made, and that was back in 2005. So that's when I met him. That's when our friendship first began, and the first moment and the first day that we actually met is filmed. So that's also something interesting because years later, as we eventually we got to know each other more and we got married, and I began to manage him and his career, and the rest was history. There was lots of fantastic moments in life. We still have a friendship. Obviously, we've been separated. We've been divorced now for a few years, but we kept the business and the friendship conversations ongoing. So it was interesting because that documentary was the first time that I also met some of Iran's hip-hop artists. Back in the day, it was Reza Pishro, it was Hichkas, Tatalu, Tohi. It was the first time that I believe, it was the first time that Yas actually met everybody in a studio back then. And it was through my filming that I brought everybody together. And it was interesting for me because it was a complete new phenomena of this Iranian hip hop. And at that time, to know that I'm sitting with the greatest, now they call them the first generation, or the main generation of the Iranian hip hop, which also has opened the way for some incredible new talent, incredible new singers and writers and performers that have, come forward and shown themselves throughout the years since 2005. It's been a long time. They've gotten older. I haven't, just FYI. So, it goes back to that documentary. So I was thinking about putting that. But back then, before I even went to start this documentary, before I even started this path, I had worked in music management for many, many years. I had worked with the management for Bon Jovi, for Skid Row, for Motley Crue, Scorpions. Before that, I worked for a booking agency, and we booked all the tours for David Bowie and Pink Floyd and The Cure, Depeche Mode, Sade, Peter Gabriel, Genesis, Duran Duran, back in the days, and so many superstars. My very first concert was actually, I'll tell you that in a separate story. Because that was an interesting story, but it was really my break into the music business. I was very, very young, probably one of the youngest people that started working in an office, and they didn't want to hire me. I was too young. I was inexperienced. I had never worked in an office. I'd never worked in the music business. Nobody even knew. I didn't even know that people make money in music business. And so there was a woman by the name of Sheila Klein, who is an angel for me from day one. She has always been there. Sheila unfortunately passed away at a very young age in her 30s due to breast cancer. But before she left this world, she gave me the gift of music. She brought me into the music business where everybody didn't want me to get hired at a very fancy and well-known and popular, very small clique of a company. There was only a few people in the company. They didn't want to hire me because I was too young. I didn't have any experience. I didn't know anything about music. I'd never worked in an office. I didn't know what a fax machine was back then. I didn't know, and I needed the job. I needed to pay my bills. I needed to pay my rent. I was living by myself, and I was young. It was during the Iran-Iraq war. So much was going on in between the countries. So a lot was happening. Sheila said that the owners didn't want me originally to work there because of my inexperience at my young age, and they didn't think that I was going to be, serious because of my age. And I said, listen, I really need this job. I need the money. I don't have work. I have to pay my bills. Just give me a chance, and I won't let you down. Those the last things that I told her. So I waited. 1 week passed, 2 weeks passed, 3 weeks passed, 4 weeks passed, and I called her and I said, listen, I have to pay my bills. The people who had recommended me for that job were from a restaurant that I used to be a hostess at. It was a restaurant by the name of Metropolis on Columbus Avenue and First Street, for some of those people that remember Metropolis back in the day in New York City. I became the hostess and then the assistant manager, and they kept saying, don't tell people how old you are. You're much more mature for your age than your age, so don't let people know how old you are, because then they won't take you seriously. And eventually the owner of that restaurant was a man by the name of Donald Zuckerman, and there was a woman, his friend and manager, by the name of Mindy Birnbaum, if I'm not mistaken. Donald and Mindy, if I'm not mistaken. It's many, many years ago. But they helped me in my life, and actually I tried to see if I can track them down and just say years later, say thank you, because at that young age, I was still in my teens. I don't know, I was like 15, 16 years old or something. I don't even remember, but I was in my teens. When the owner of the restaurant, Donald, used to be a music manager for a singer by the name of Patti Smith. And she was very big. She still is, obviously, but she was a big known name back then. And he had opened up this restaurant called Metropolis, very fancy restaurant, lots of people, lots of celebrities. I remember Billy Joel and, God, I'm blanking. What was his wife's name? It'll come to me. But anyway, so Billy Joel would come to the restaurant, a lot of superstars would come in, and I was the hostess. I would always greet them and say hello to them and bring them in. And eventually when the restaurant closed down, they felt sorry for me. They said, she's too young, she doesn't have anybody else out there. And so Mindy and Donald made a phone call for me to a company called International Talent Group, ITG. And they made a reference to me, and they called Sheila Klein, who was the manager, the business manager for the office. And so they said, call her. And I gave her a call. And again, I had never worked in an office. I didn't know anything about music business. I didn't know anything about working in an office space. And I was young, and I was just basically, I just got out of school. So I called her up, and she said, we'll let you know. And I called her again, and she finally realized that I really needed this job. And she said, okay. She had me come in, and she goes, here's the deal, Netta. Nobody wants you to work here. You're too young. You're inexperienced. We don't know your background in the music business. You've never done this before, but something tells me that I should give you a chance. And so that day, Sheila Klein gave me a chance. And she said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. We give you 2 weeks. If you do a good job, you can stay. If not, sorry, the boys don't want you to work here. The guys, it's a very big, famous office here. Lots of people are working here. Lots of bands and acts that we're booking the tours for. We don't have time for mistakes. We don't have time to teach you anything. So they don't want you here. So don't go to them for anything. I want you to stay here. If you have any problems or any questions, come to me and ask me, and I will help you out. But don't go to anybody else, because, they don't have the time, and they're not really interested in working with an inexperienced person. I said, give me 2 weeks and I won't prove you wrong. I won't let you down. And that was my beginning into the music world. Those 2 weeks, I stayed. I made lots of funny mistakes. I'll tell you some of them and other stories. I didn't know what a fax machine was. She would come in and she'd say, send this fax out. I'm like, what's a fax machine? I'm like, oh wait, you mean this paper is going to be sent out immediately right now in Australia? They're going to have this paper? And she's like, oh, she was Jewish. And she was like, ay vey, don't tell people all this stuff. And so we would always laugh, but she kind of became like my big sister. And I love that woman so much. She did pass away, unfortunately, but she was definitely an angel. For me, she was an angel. And there is not a day in my life. She knows that every single day throughout all these years, there are times that she's the first person that helped me open up my bank account. She was the first person that helped me set up all my business dealings and taught me how to, write a letter, how to do this. And I was always good at talking. I was always good at speaking to people on the phones. And sometimes they're like, well, you can't be on this phone call, on personal calls for so long. I said, this is not a personal phone call. I'm talking to so-and-so. And they're like, what do you mean? You've been talking to him for 45 minutes. And I said, well, yeah, he's just been talking to me and asking me questions. And so I'm answering. And so who was he? He was the head of a record company, the manager of a big superstar, or maybe, the musicians themselves. They would call and I would talk to them. I always was just curious about them, and I always just treated them like the human beings that they were, without the awe and without the wanting or needing anything from them in return. So I was just always curious about meeting and talking to everyday people. To me, they were everyday people. To others, they were superstars, or they were, heads of companies and Fortune 500 companies. But I always just enjoyed talking to them. So they saw that I had this gift of gab, as they say in English. That's, as I'm going to translate this in Farsi for my Iranian friends as well. The gift of gab is, the ability to have a conversation with people and to speak with people. So anyway, 2 weeks later, we went to our concert. My first concert was The Cure at that time. And after the concert, it was the first time I'd been to a live concert before, and it was amazing. It was incredible. And then going backstage and seeing how everything's done behind the scenes. And at the very end, everybody came back in afterwards, and I saw the group. There were about 7 of us in the office, and they all came around me, and they all held a glass of champagne, and they gave me a glass of champagne, and they said, welcome to our newest addition to the company, ITG, International Talent Group. Welcome to the group. And Sheila looked at me and she said, you got the job. That's how it started for me. I got the job, and I started to work with huge superstars and celebrities, and I never wanted to let Sheila down. I always wanted her to be proud of me and to be happy that she didn't make a mistake by hiring me. So when everybody else went home at night, I had the keys, and I would stay at the office. And I would learn how to read contracts. I would learn how to use, way back then, it was called the telex machine. So we had to enter codes every single time we wanted to send an international message to someone. I had to learn how to use the machine, how to use the typewriter. And I remember Wayne, the owner, came up to me one day. He's like, well, if you want me to sponsor you for a typing class, I'll send you to a class. And I said, no. I don't want to go to a typing class. Thank you so much, but I don't plan on being your typist forever. So, he said, you're lost. But I knew that if I did that, then I was going to be his assistant or someone's assistant forever. And that was not my plan. It was a start, because you have to start from somewhere, you have to learn, but that was not where I wanted to stay forever. So I said, thank you, but no thank you, I'll learn. And I quickly kept trying to, fast type myself on the computer and learn the system. I kept the job, and until I got an offer for a management company. I mean, I had a few different people asking me for positions, they would offer me positions, but I really liked the people I was working with. I was new, and I'm a very loyal person just by default. So I like to stay at the places with the people that I know and I trust. So I decided to stay. So I kept getting these job offers to come and work with them. And I started as a receptionist, just answering phone calls and talking to people. And then I learned how to use the contracts, and I learned about the AFMM, the American Federation of Musicians, the Union for Music and Musicians, how it works, how it's set up, and basically started everything from the ground up. And I learned the system. Many, many late nights, many times people would go home, yet I would stay at the office, work, read contracts, learn about what promoters do, what they're about, read the contracts, how the lawyers' notes and the agreements between everyone. And so I just slowly started to teach myself. And of course, Sheila helped me so much throughout the days, and she introduced me to everybody, and I was always good and warm with people. I was easy to talk with people, met a lot of people, introduced people to each other, and the circle of friendship, the circle of influence started. I was still very young. So that's how it began. And then one day I get a call from, we were working with Scorpions at that time, and their manager was a gentleman by the name of David Krebs, which I have a funny story about David Krebs, which one day I'll tell you. So he was managing, and also he was working with Nick Karras. Nick Karras, who is still, to this day, one of my dearest friends. He's an extended family to me. He's my family at this point. He's like my uncle. A very, very well-known, hardworking, liked guy in the music business. And he worked with Ted Nugent. He's worked with Scorpions, and tons of other rock stars and superstars back then. So he was actually working with ITG. He came along ITG, and Nick was originally Greek. So we had this funny connection between us, and we'd be able to just kind of go back and forth and talk and banter with each other. But he became also like my guardian, my uncle in the music business. And he would teach me a lot about, the side of agencies and the agents and their jobs and their work, and, how they negotiate and talk and do business and so forth. So we had a lot of funny experiences together working with the Scorpions. We were, went on tour together, we traveled, and the boys, hopefully one day I'll get a chance to interview the boys, Klaus and Matthias and all of them from the group, and go back to the days where I worked with them. So originally it was through Nick Karras. Then I got a call, and it was actually a woman by the name of Vicky. Back in the day, Vicky Rovner was at the office, and she was working with Scorpions and David Krebs. She made a recommendation to a company called McGee Entertainment, Doc McGee and Scott McGee. And at that time, they had called me, and I had an interview with them. And I think I met with them, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 times. Vicky as well. I didn't take the job because I kind of was afraid of leaving ITG. I was afraid of leaving my friends. I was new to the business. So I didn't know if I wanted to really shift and go into office, new people, new world, management. I didn't know. They said they're working with this artist. He's a new artist from New Jersey, long haired, saw the photos and didn't recognize him at the time. But he had some, new music. He was coming in, and they had a very small boutique management office. There was a few people in Los Angeles, Sandy and Melissa and Doc and Greg, the office manager. And then also there was a few people in the New York office, which was, at that time it was myself and it was Margaret. Later on it became Dee Dee and Melissa. If you're watching all this, I'm naming names on purpose because we're still friends. And I just wanted to this is also my acknowledgement and my ode to our longtime friendship, that I'm bringing up these names as well, so that when you guys see this, and maybe if you comment here afterwards, people will get to see who you are and just kind of connect the dots with our friendship. So that's why I'm also mentioning. And also Margaret Lacey and Vicky was back then. It was a tight group. They asked me to join them. At that time, I was still very new in the music business. I'd learned a bit on the unions and of course, receptions. So I started working again with telephones and receptions. Later on, I would work my way up to artist representative. At that point, they were managing the Scorpions and this up and coming and Skid Row and Motley Crue and other rock bands. And at that time, this hair band that they kept saying is getting very busy and we need extra help from New Jersey, didn't know who it was at the time. But after finally saying yes and going into the office, after Nick telling me to go, he said, go learn management. It's where you work with everybody and everything relating to the music. You work with the record companies, you work with the media, you work with the marketing groups, you work with the merchandising, you're working with the studios, you're working with, every single aspect of the musician's career. And you are the closest you can be with the musicians, with the groups, and also you become the go-to person for everything that everyone does in the music business. So I said, fine. I took him and he goes, if you don't like it or if you have a problem, come back. You always have a home back where you just came from. And I said, okay. And that's when I decided to go from booking agency to management and started working for Doc McGee. I didn't know back then, but I was very lucky, very blessed because I learned so much. And he really was, to this day, looking back after all those years, the best of the best. I was blessed. I was very lucky and fortunate to go and work with the best names, with the best people, the most professional teams, the best management team I could wish for. And I think that maybe some of my good deeds, my good karma paid off. And that's why I kept getting introduced to such incredible people throughout my life and so many great experiences. And that's how everything started with me working in management, and still work with Nick on the Scorpions tour because now I'm working on the management end while I just came from the booking agency side where we booked all their international tours. So it was very interesting, and the long-haired band that was just taking off and they needed extra help with was Bon Jovi. That was my experience into the world of rock and roll because I was coming mostly from the British bands, British pop bands back in the day. And then I go into management and we start working with all these rock acts, and Bon Jovi became the super hit that, they are. I was blessed. I worked with some of the most professional, fantastic, most talented people in the music business, and I learned so much for them. The Iranian market obviously is completely different than the American market, even though they are very different than the British market and the European market. But in the end, we're talking about talent. We're talking about music. So anybody that works with music, that works with talent, there's a small group of people that are working together and running the business. It's a very cool bunch of people, very talented bunch of people, smart people, and I'm blessed to have worked with them for what turned out to be ultimately almost about 30 years of my life. All of that started with Sheila Klein, and I actually asked her one day, why did you give me a chance? And she said, when I met you, when I saw how serious you are in your business, and when I knew that I could trust you and your word, I decided to give you a chance. And she said, I had a feeling that one day I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask you for a job. And I just smiled so big because it was just the biggest compliment I could think of. And the funny thing is, years later, when Sheila was switching jobs, I made a couple of calls for her because now I've had this incredible amount of network of people and contacts, friends that have become friends in the music business, and everybody was running different departments. And I was able to make a couple of phone calls and have an opportunity to introduce Sheila to somebody where she then became part of their teams. I was able to make a phone call and help Sheila get a job. And so it was kind of how the karmic wheel goes, what comes around goes around. And I couldn't have been more happy that I was the person to be able to give her some love and to say thank you and open that opportunity for her. So when she said one day, I thought maybe you will give me a job, she was actually right. I was able to actually repay the favor and open some doors for her eventually. So that was my story with Mickey Entertainment. That was my story with ITG. And of course, so many incredible people that I have met, so many tours. There was a time when we were traveling constantly from one city to another state on a tour bus from here to there. And we were just constantly working, and we loved it. I loved it. It was a lot of hard work. We didn't know when morning and night came. Sometimes we'd work into the middle of the night. And many times I slept in the office in the middle of the night because you're dealing with international hours. And, this is before everyone had a cell phone into their hands. So we had to stay late at the office. And I remember just staying late, spending the night at the office, sleeping on the couch, getting up, taking a shower. There was a shower there. And then starting the day again and create our week and continue the week over. So lots of hard work, lots of fun travel, lots of experiences, lots of funny stories, lots of adventures. But I learned so much. And what was interesting was that throughout the years, I realized that even when I stepped out of music for a while, every single conversation that I had, at the end of the day, you're always selling a service, a product, or an idea to the mass market. So our product was the music. The musicians had their product, which was, their talent. And it's always serving to the masses, to the mass market. And I realized how in the end, every conversation that I would have years later, whether I'm in, New York or Los Angeles or even here in Istanbul, business meetings, I would see that they were very much equivalent with each other. So, what we talked about, some kind of a product or service, it's still the same in another industry. I wondered if all those years of music really paid off for me in a business sense, because if I'm no longer in the music business, is it going to make a difference? And I started to realize business is business. You learn how to market, you learn how to sell, you learn how to deal with the mass market, you learn what the public wants. Actually, that's one of my good talents, if I have to admit it, is that I am good at picking talent. I'm good at picking the right ideas, the right service, or the right products. I have a knack for it. And I realized that years later on, but it's also obviously from years of training of what works and what doesn't work in the mass market or in the world of marketing and promotions. And so I said all of this to say that what I always wanted to do at the end of the day was, after I had traveled and lived and worked in the music business for so many years, I wanted to start a talk program. That was my dream. And it was at that time that I went to Iran. I made a documentary on the youth culture. That took off. That opened the door for me to give lectures and I even gave a commencement speech at a university. I started lecturing at universities. I got paid to talk, so that was good. That was my first experience there. And from there, I was able to really talk about how entertainment can play a very crucial role in social and cultural diplomacy, and how all this politics and politicians, all these wars, and me having experienced what's happened in Iran with US and all these, the conflicts that's happened throughout the Middle East. At the end of the day, everybody was a talking head. Everybody was listening to the news and reading, but none had the kind of impact that entertainment had, and the power that entertainment has, and the power that lyrics and music and filmmakers and writers and performers and actors, the power that they have into bringing us together, uniting us, because there's a sense of music that's uniting us. There's a sense of emotion and feelings that maybe actors are uniting people that way through the writing, through the script. So storytelling became obviously something that to me was something that was familiar, and also something that I knew had an impact on the masses, on the mass market. So I decided to talk, and I decided to make a difference through talking to people, through bringing people together, through connecting people together, whether it's for business or whether it's for friendship or any kind of a cultural aspect or whatever it was, to bring people together through the power of entertainment, through the power of talk. So back then, I started to talk about me having my own talk program. So it's very funny, because as I started to now do this, slowly regaining my confidence again to speak to everyone and to get in front of the camera again, and just to say, I wasn't sure if people cared. I don't know if anybody was ever interested. So when all this was happening, I said to myself, let me start all over again. Let me start with talking. And it was at that time that I was with Yas, I was managing him, I was married to him. His career, his life, his music became my number one focus, because obviously it came from a place of love. I wanted to do what would make him happy. I also knew that he's one of the most talented people that I'd met. Different market, it was a Persian market, but still one of the most talented writers, one of the most talented performers that I had met. And I was so excited about him and his music and his lyrics and the messages that he has for people that I wanted to help bring his voice to the masses. Help bring his voice and his message to the masses. And we did that. And I'm very proud of him that he was able to do this. I'm proud of me for being able to kind of cross-culturally be able to bring his voice. And I really didn't know anything about the Iranian market. My Farsi was not even strong at the time I met him. You know, for every 2 or 3 words, I would speak for 2 or 3 things in English, 1 thing in Farsi, and it was difficult. And looking back at those old footage, we both used to look at it and laugh at how bad my Farsi was. I'm much better at it now. So anyway, it was at that time that I said, I'm going to put everything aside and focus on him. And I'm glad I did. And he deserves all the good things that have happened to him. His talent has brought to him, and the music has made such an impact and has helped so many people, to his viewers and his listeners. So I'm really proud of that for both of us. And I said, we didn't have any kids, but I said, Yas is our child. And even though when we separated, I always told him, I said, look, we're no longer together. I said, but I don't want you to give up on our child, which was Yas, which was the music, the message and the mission that Yas, the music, was supposed to have. So I said, don't ever give up on that. And you know, we both went to our own sides for a while, but I always told him that I would be there to help him and support him in any way that I could. And I said, make sure that you don't let Yas die. That's our child. That's our little creation together. And you cannot let Yas, the name, the image, you can't tar it. If you have to make it clean, you have to keep it well, you have to feed it, you have to make sure that the image and the work that we've done stays up. And he did that, and he stayed there. And I'm proud of him for that. And I'm proud that Yas is now, at this point, at this point, maybe about 18 or 20 years old. The logo, the music, the song, the person, Yas, it's still ongoing, and he's getting bigger and better as time goes by. He's getting more professional. The songs are getting better. I would pull his ears. If I was still there on a daily basis, I would have probably made a little, twitches here and there. But that's part of the process. He has to go through his thing. I have to go through my thing. I have to shut up sometimes. He has to do his own stuff, and vice versa. But this gave me an opportunity for me to follow my passion. My passion was to talk to people. My passion was to bring people together. And I made this video today. I thought it was only going to be a few minutes, sorry. But I made this video today because I was talking to my friend Jennifer, and I wasn't sure if anybody cares. And I said, I love doing this. Maybe I can even turn this into a business, turn it into, use my know-how and turn it into marketing. And I have all these great ideas. But at the end of the day, it only works if people like what I'm talking about, if people are getting something out of my conversations, if people are sharing my stories or talking, and if it's adding value to someone's knowledge or to their days, then it makes sense. There's thousands of people now that are talking, so many talented people, so many podcasts, so many stories. I don't know if I'm as good as them. I may have the same experience and the know-how, but at the end of the day, people either get you or they don't. So I still don't know if that's where I'm headed. I would love for that to be the opportunity, but I still don't know. Time will tell, and people, you guys, you'll tell. You will let me know if what I'm doing is working and if I should continue or not. But Jennifer sent me a message, and she just gave me so much love. I've got so many friends that were first started sharing this video. A lot of my American friends, a lot of my music friends started sending me messages saying, it's about time. You've been talking about this for years. Now you're doing it. Start talking, girl. Get out there and do your thing. And I can't tell you how surprised I was, how happy I was, how impressed, and how I have been for every single person who, so many of them were there for years, who watched me go through this whole process and told me that now is the time to get out there and start talking. And hopefully there's something that I can give back to people. Maybe there's something I can teach people through my years of experience or music business or just life. Maybe relationships. I'm a good friend for lots of people that are going through different things in life and where they need a little extra help and hope. Maybe if they need someone to talk to in relationships, maybe I can be that for you guys. I just love to have a chance to talk to everyone and bring people together and bring cultures together. So, and the power that we have, I made a video a couple of videos ago on my page where we talked about the Iran market. If you haven't seen it, you can go see it. I titled it the Persian market. And I talked about the power that the Iranians have, the power of the Persian vote and the Persian numbers, I guess, the market that we are. And then now, as soon as I did that, we saw this video with Ed Sheeran, who just came out, called Azizam, which, by the way, I have been teaching Azizam to all of my friends for many, many years. Azizam basically means my dear. And so I've been calling everyone Azizam for years and years. All my non-Persian or non-Farsi speaking friends, the first thing that you will hear from them, what I taught to them was Azizam. So I'm glad that has come out now. Ed Sheeran is singing it, and I believe, who is this? Ilya, the producer who came out, Iranian producer, that brought this music out. Bravo to you. Good for you. Good for Ed. And everybody else who's been singing Azizam. I'll teach you guys the next word. I've been teaching a lot of people about A Baba. So anyone that knows me will know that they also learned another word called A Baba, which means oh no, or as the Turks would say, Allah, Allah. So A Baba is my other main go-to word when something gets stuck or when something is like my oh no moment. So anyway, this is why I started to do what I'm doing. I wanted to give you a little background. I really just wanted to also say thank you, because so many friends, we were talking about my friend Maya. Maya's a wonderful singer, American singer who's also here in Turkey. And she's fantastic. And she sent me a message and she said, my God, Netta, you Iranians, the Persian market, I did something and I didn't realize. I looked back and I had 10,000 likes on something that I wrote or sang or did this. And I kept saying, I'm telling you, the Iranian voice matters. The Persians really know how to show support, and they share and they support each other. So I'm really proud of that. And so Maya wrote this and she sent me a message, and then I saw Azizam, and then of course, we still have our own collaboration coming up with Yas and Tech9 and Reza Pistro. It's taken so long. I know. It's in Yas's hand. Blame him, not me. He's going to hate me. But there's reasons. There's reasons for everything. And I do believe that when something happens, it's supposed to happen at the right time. So when it does get released, and it will get released, it's a fantastic song. It's a fantastic song. When it does get released, it'll get the attention that it needs. But everybody's fine with each other. The music will come out. You guys will love it. I'm sure of it. And I'm going to have my long conversation with Yas. I'm going to do my interview with Yas. Then I'll also talk to Reza. I'll have an interview with him. I'll have an interview with Nine. And hopefully many other people that you will find interesting, and people that you want me to speak with that maybe I know or have contact with. I'll talk to them. A lot of people that are not necessarily in the music business, but fantastic, interesting people that I would love for you guys to meet. They made an impact on me, so I'd like to bring their words and their stories to you as well. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to let you know why doing these is important for me, how it started, where it came from, where it's going. Nobody knows. But if you're here till now listening, I just wanted to say thank you. If you've been following me all this time for years, I want to say thank you. If you're a new follower, I want to say thank you. And if you're sharing this with other people that need to get a little hope, a little inspiration, and who wants to meet someone who will always tell them to never give up, who will always tell them that hope is the foremost and most important thing, and to always have something funny to talk about, something inspirational to share, then introduce them to me, bring them to my page, and hopefully we'll get a chance to know each other some more. Thank you so much. Take care.
Talk. All you have to do is talk.